we have to ask ourselves if it worked for us. We had one country with a few, it wasn't completely federalist, it wasn't completely unitarist, it was an amalgam that only suited the British. It didn't suit us. As far as I'm concerned, it was a powder keg. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Because it gave a few territories, Buganda, Bunyoro, etc., especially Buganda, superior status. That was never going to work. That was a recipe for disaster, but that's what the Lancaster Conference decided to give us at independence. Okay, in 1962, Uganda became independent. Dr. Apollo Milton Obote became the executive prime minister and head of government. In 1963, Obote, whose UPC party had allied with the KY, Kabaka Yeka, primarily to prevent the DP coming into power. Sectarianism is there again. Dr. Obote invited Kabaka Mutesa to become the first president of Uganda, and Edward Mutesa took up this position in 1963, after independence. 1964, the KY UPC alliance began to disintegrate. And this is why UPC supported a referendum that eventually gave the territories that had been seized from Uganda by the British. They were seized from Bunyoro. A referendum in 1964 gave these territories back to Bunyoro. The Kabaka's government was not pleased with that. They probably felt the UPC government should have been on their side in this. The UPC government felt a referendum is a referendum, it's the voice of the people. So the rift between KY and UPC started there. And that's not the only reason. There were various other reasons, but that was the marked point at which they began the KY-UPC alliance split. That was 1964. 1966, Daudi Ocheng, who was actually an MP, a KY MP, moved a bill in Parliament to investigate malpractices, financial malpractices, engaged in by the then Prime Minister, Dr. Obote, Colonel Idi Amin at the time, Mr. Felix Onama, and Mr. Adoko Nechon, who were accused of malpractices in the Congo regarding gold and ivory, etc. Obote's ministers, 5 of them, actually supported this bill, this investigation. 5 ministers who were actually UPC ministers. Some of you might remember the story. Dr. Lumu, Mr. Matthias Ngobi, Gracie Binjira, Bala Chichiria, and another one was George Magezi, UPC ministers. Tensions were beginning to rise. Dr. Obote sent orders for these ministers to be arrested. They were arrested in the middle of an emergency cabinet meeting. This was in February 1966. They were detained without trial. The next day, Dr. Obote abolished the president, who was Kabaka Mutesa. I think my colleague will go into a little bit more detail on that. He abolished the constitution, and he abolished, basically, he suspended the presidency, the vice president, who was the Chamazinga of Musoga at the time, Mr. William Wilberforce Nadiope, and suspended the constitution. And replaced that constitution with the now famous or infamous Pigeonhole Constitution. Pigeonhole Constitution, so called because apparently the parliamentarians were invited or ordered to vote it into power and then go to their pigeonholes and then read it. Became the Pigeonhole Constitution, 1966. Replaced the 1962 Constitution. The Pigeonhole Constitution actually centralized power from the changed the system from the semi-federal, semi-unitary system to a wholly centralized power with all the power, pretty much unfettered power in the hands of the presidency. That was 1966. April. In May 1966, the Kabaka of Uganda ordered the government of Uganda off the territory of Uganda. That's why I'm saying it was always a powder keg waiting to happen. He is the Kabaka who recognized Uganda territory as his people's territory. Now, here's the government of Uganda trying to form a modern government on the territory of the Kabaka. The Kabaka orders it off. Unfortunately, the Kabaka cannot enforce this order. So, Dr. Obote ordered his commander-in-chief, Idi Amin, to attack the Lubiri. The Lubiri, or the palace of Buganda, was attacked. There was a bloody battle. The Kabaka ended up in exile here in London. So, I want you to see, as I narrate this history, I want you to look more closely at the nature of the strife. It was always along tribal sectarian lines. It was always a tension between people trying to assert themselves and a system trying to impose on the people. So that is what happened in 1966. 1967, the Pigeonhole Constitution was replaced by the Republican Constitution, by which Uganda became a republic. Kingdoms were officially abolished. In fact, the abolition of Uganda Kingdom was dated back to 1966. But that was the end of kingdoms. Uganda became a republic, and we all hoped, well, those who were old enough hoped, we would now go forth and build up a republic. And economically, can you be quiet, sunshine? Sorry. So basically, this is what happened. 1966, Uganda becomes a republic. 1969, tensions between Idi Amin and Dr. Obote begin rising. They culminated in 1971, the overthrow of Obote. I think I'm a little bit further up. The overthrow of Obote's government in 1971. The tensions were... Idi Amin was the commander of the military, so he had the army on his side. He used the army to overthrow Dr. Obote's government. Dr. Obote had become president without actually holding a general election. So, what I'm trying to say is, all the actors in the arena find a system that is very, very flawed. They all work within a very flawed system. Idi Amin came in, there were massacres, especially in Langi and Acholi, the murder of Archbishop Lumu, and hundreds of thousands of people, of Ugandans. That all happened under Idi Amin. Idi Amin instituted the State Research Bureau. The State Research Bureau was an organ of terror, state terror. Some might say that the General Service Unit of the 1960s, headed by, I think, Akena Doko, served similar purposes. Basically, the actors were acting within a system that allowed the president enough power to do as he wanted. Well, Idi Amin, so the end of the 70s saw the ouster of Idi Amin. In came a series of presidents until finally Dr. Obote regained power after the general election of 1980. Dr. Obote ruled, Museveni went to the bush. Museveni went to the bush with a few people, and his guerrilla warfare grew into a fighting force that eventually toppled Tito Lutwa's army. Again, Museveni's bush warfare basically pitted, if you like, the Southerners together against the army, which they consider to be Northerners. Always these sectarian divisions, always each one trying to pull their advantage. Always the same old thread showing through our politics. So, 1996, enter Yoweri Museveni. And what have we seen? Joint action against the threat of terrorism. That replaced the State Research Bureau, if you want. We've got safe houses once again. We have a failed state that my colleague described. We have a failed state. We have court torture. We have abuse of human rights. We have suppression of democracy. We have the whole lot. We've had it before. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have it again. Which is why the Uganda Federal Alliance has always insisted that even though good leadership is very, very important, it cannot be underestimated. Merely changing a leader without changing the system will only plunge us back into the same state terror, politicization of the army, the same system. That system is wrong. Which is why I'm going to conclude by saying, the unitary system has failed Uganda. We need a system that will recognize our different ethnicities, that will assign power to the regions. We need a system, the federal system of governance, which will devolve power to the regions, which will, if you like, control, limit the right now unfettered powers of the president. He changes the constitution to suit his means. He does everything. I mean, he's in charge of the military, he's in charge of the treasury, because he's got so much power. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to submit, even an angel, to use the word lightly, given such power, will misuse it. The system, the unitary system, gives too much power to the person at the center. We must dismantle it. We need a system that will devolve power to the regions. We need a system that will give a real voice to the people. People need a voice. They need to speak up for themselves. There was a minute I was speaking to one of the guests today, and we pondered on a presidential appointment some years back. A minister was assigned to Karamoja to become minister of Karamoja. I think it was Tom Butime. Tom Butime said that's a demotion, and he actually refused to take it up. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that Karamojong are not part of Uganda? Does that mean that the Karamojong are in any way inferior to Tom Butime or anybody else? So we have a system that's unbalanced. You take a ministerial position, you are asked to go and become minister of Karamoja, and you say that's a demotion. I'm not going there. We have a very unbalanced system. Surely aren't the Karamojong better off deciding administering their own territory? Surely aren't the Karamojong better off? They speak the language, the local language. Mrs. Museveni, I don't know, I can't say she hasn't done a good job because I haven't got the statistics, but surely she does not even speak the language. So, with the best will in the world, her effectiveness can only be limited. Please, we need a system that will empower people to run their own regions. Federalism is not about supremacy of one region or another. No, federalism is about empowering the regions to become strong, united. To become strong individually, which will make them stronger, united. Ladies and gentlemen, federalism is the only way forward for Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Edith or Mrs. Edith Mpanga. It was a brilliant presentation, I must say, and I hope we've digested and we have questions, regarding that topic. We now go on to the third speaker, Nova Tugwanyo.